and the show is yours.
Okay, awesome, wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share our presentation so that we can get started. But thank you everyone for attending. We're really excited that you're here. So I'm going to go ahead and share. All right.
Alrighty, well, as Chelsea said, thank you for joining us today to learn a little bit more about chapter finances and fundraising and how to spend and earn the right way.
All right, so I'm Chelsea Fix. I'm an educational and leadership consultant with Delta Sigma Pi. I was initiated in spring of 2017 at the new Chi chapter, which is at the University of Lynchburg in Virginia. So I've worked with countless chapters across the nation. I think it's over 90 at this point that I've either done some kind of consultation visit with or some kind of kickoff call with. So I'm personally really excited to work with more of you, and thank you for coming. I've also worked on a couple of other projects as a central office staff member, including the chapter finances, budgeting and financial statements videos, which can be found on the Delta Sig University portion of our website. And I've also updated the bylaws and policy and procedures template. So I kind of have an idea about finance at this point, and also from my work with tons of chapters.
Alrighty, and then my name is Katie O'Connor. I am a current senior about to graduate from the University of St. Thomas, and that is in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm studying business, leadership, and management, as well as marketing. And I was initiated back in the spring of 2018 during my freshman year into the Untitled Chapter here at St. Thomas. Throughout the last couple of years, I've held a variety of positions in the chapter, including VP Alumni Relations, president, most recently Pledge Ed last semester, and then throughout the last couple semesters, I've been leading our new D&I team over at our chapter. And then on a bigger scale outside of just New Tau, I was on the National COVID-19 Task Force at the end of last school year. And within that task force, I was on our chapter operations subgroup. And then within that, I was in our finance committee. And so I've worked on kind of reviewing what all of our fundraising opportunities are and what that looks like in a virtual environment, as well as some financial management tips as well. So super excited to have all of you here. And now I'm going to pass it back to Chelsea to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. So this is kind of our agenda for today, but if other things come up, I know we have a smaller group. I would love to kind of get into the minutia with some of you on some of these things. So, and Katie is happy to provide feedback as well. So this is the gist of what we're going to cover. Some upcoming expenses, some things to consider with the chapter management program or CMP, the essentials of a budget, a typical estimated revenue and all those expenses of your chapter. A lot of the revenues and expenses we'll look at today are really pre-COVID, so it should give you a good idea of what to expect moving forward, hopefully, fingers crossed. I know we can't guarantee anything right now. We'll also cover some tips to avoid losing money for your chapter, some fundraising, corporate sponsorship ideas, and then we'll kind of have a discussion to kind of generate fundraising ideas and hear what some of your financial best practices are as your chapter. And then we'll also cover some additional resources, have a question and answer period, and then wrap up the presentation. All right, so if you're new to your role and will be serving for the remainder of the calendar year after this term, please check the chapter management program in the hub and the CMP guide. That's something we'll kind of look at later, and I'll show you where to find that. One thing to keep in mind is that insurance invoices will be sent out soon. So really, hopefully you've budgeted plenty for that. Also, your spring budget and financial statements will be due in June, of course, and that consists of a chapter budget for the next period, actual revenues and expenses for the period that just ended, and of course, a balance sheet for the period that just ended. And then when it comes to that annual financial review, that review should really occur as close to the end of the current fiscal year as possible. but before that June 1st deadline. So the reviewer is typically a CPA, a member of the school's accounting faculty, or a similar professional. And then another CMP requirement that a lot of chapters get confused on that I talk to is the fundraising report. And in order to get that fundraising report, it's not actually a report. It's simply adding a fundraising event onto your chapter's calendar and then filling out that form that accompanies it, just like any other event. All right. So whenever you transition, it's really important to revert back to the budget and see what new things that you might need to add or subtract. 2020 has brought lots of financial hardships, and chapters across the country have lowered their local dues to account for this. And if you haven't done so already, this may be a good time for you to consider raising your dues back up to that pre-COVID price. And if you don't need to raise it up quite that high, maybe just a little higher than you had before, that's a good best practice to keep in mind during these times. All right, so revenue. Chapters often ask me, what is my budget supposed to look like? And every chapter is going to have a different budget, most likely. But the key expenses like dues and costs associated with pledging should remain the same. Here's an example of a chapter income statement during a normal year pre-pandemic. So yours is probably going to look very different than this. But also check with your university's student activities department or Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life, really whichever one you fall under, to see what other budgeting resources are available. They may have a better budget for you to follow than what we've provided here. All right. So again, this is just an example of some of the expenses your chapter may incur. And your budget doesn't necessarily have to look like this. Please keep that in mind. But professional speakers, which is one of the things listed here, that's also something that can be subsidized with your chapter leadership fund. And Katie will kind of briefly touch on the chapter leadership funds a little bit later and what that looks like. Okay, so if your chapter finances look something like this example or the examples previously provided, then this budget is likely close to your budgeted net income if the before examples match what you're currently doing. But probably not, because those were pre-COVID examples. So here are some really simple tips to avoid losing money. One thing to keep in mind is pledge pins should not need to be replaced every semester. If you order more because you have more pledges, then that's okay. But if you have like 15 pledges each semester, you shouldn't have to buy 15 more each semester, if that makes sense. And it may also be beneficial to collect the pledges pins from them prior to the initiation ceremony, if you've even distributed this semester. Keep in mind, while we're in this different environment and with everything being virtual, pledge pins are not necessary this semester. But during the initiation ceremony, normally the pledge pin is replaced with the badge during the initiation ceremony. Another thing, if you have an initiation regalia trunk, or in this semester's case, a regalia box, be sure to inventory it promptly as it arrives and as it departs from the chapter's possession. If inventory is not accurately reported, the chapter may have to pay additional fees for lost or damaged items. I've seen chapters pay thousands of dollars for this next thing, but composites, a lot of them will get roped into a lengthy contract. And remember that composites are not something that's really a necessary expense, but if it's something your chapter is really wanting to have, which is understandable, then it's best to kind of save up and really budget for those items. Another thing, at the beginning and end of each term, it's important to review your membership roster to ensure that everyone who's graduated has been marked accordingly. So if you know someone will be studying abroad, make a note of that to adjust the roster when the time is appropriate to do so. Along with this, be sure trials are reported in a timely fashion, because if they're not reported, they become null and void. So make sure that they're reported accordingly. also from a finances perspective, if the chapter puts someone on trial last semester and they're still on your roster, they were still on your roster last semester, for example, their trial wasn't likely reported, and then the chapter may have to pay dues for that individual this term because they weren't reported as being expelled last term, if that makes sense. So ultimately, reviewing your roster ensures that the chapter isn't charged for members who they shouldn't be charged for. Now I'm passing it back to Katie. Oh, here we go.
Alrighty, so moving into some fun fundraising ideas.
Okay, cool. There we go. Sorry, Katie.
We have our first category of fundraising ideas, which is ultimately business related, as first and foremost, we are that professional business fraternity. And so just using the skills that we have learned in our business classes, learned from professional events through DSP, or even learned in our internship experiences, and creating that to be financially beneficial for us as a chapter. So this could be anything as a interview prep course. It could be resume writing or LinkedIn profile building. It could be a professional kind of dress do's and don'ts fashion show, or it could even be tutoring services for any of the business courses. Can get really creative with this one. Moving on to donations, don't feel hesitant to reach out to other people. This could be alumni, so either alumni from your school or DSP alumni from your chapter as well. Corporate sponsorships, which we will touch on in a bit. Any sort of social media or phone-a-thon to advertise for donations, or even reaching out to any sort of student kind of like activities office. So whether it's your undergrad student government or any sort of activities office that your university might have, they may have some funds available for your chapter. You might just have to ask for it. Moving on to our next category, we have any sort of services. And so this honestly is my favorite category of fundraising events, because they also kind of can double dip as a brotherhood event, because a lot of these end up being really fun to do and a great bonding as well. We've had a lot of chapters I've seen do some sort of either dog walking or pet sitting. I mean, who doesn't love dogs? I've also seen a lot of fence building, recycling. Being in Minnesota, we do a lot of shoveling snow, or any sort of river cleanup along the Mississippi. We usually do that around Earth Day. Any sort of services to kind of help out your local community is also great. And then our next category here we have is any sort of sales. This could be shirts, stickers. I've seen a lot of chapters, mine specifically, do Chipotle fundraisers where you get a certain percentage if they mention your name on a certain night. Our chapter does Yankee Candle. That's a big plug for anyone looking for something almost completely virtual. Could also do any sort of 50-50 raffle. We've done that before as like a brotherhood alumni event. Basically, get creative with this. There's a lot of different businesses that are willing to partner with student groups to kind of give you a percentage of sales. So get creative. Moving on to our next category, we have some contests and events. As you might have seen on TikTok, there's a funny PowerPoint contest trend that was pretty popular at the beginning of quarantine. We've done that. I've seen a couple of chapters do case competitions where they partner up with their business school or with a corporate partner to do a case study. We've done social media bingo where you put it on your story and have people send in money to fill out a bingo card, and you can raise money for either your chapter or for a specific organization that way. And then our last category we have is the Chapter Leadership Fund. I know Chelsea touched on this a little bit earlier. But basically what the CLF is a great online way for anyone to donate to your specific chapter. So again, great way to reach out to alumni, either of your specific chapter or school alumni or parents, friends, family, anyone who wants to donate to your chapter specifically. And then this can go towards any sort of conference fees or large chapter events to really help bring down those costs. And it's a great way to kind of store that money in a fund and get a lot of outside donations as well.
It's also it's a tax deductible way to earn money. So that's a wonderful thing. It's really used for leads, grand chapter congresses, and like I was saying earlier, now professional speakers. So very great resource there. This is just a little bit more on corporate sponsorship. So I'll toss it back to you, Katie.
Perfect. So corporate sponsors, great way to not only build connections and network, but also a great way to get some money as well. So the key here is to really just make it a mutually beneficial relationship. And so really look to see what you can offer to these corporate sponsors. So this could be using your social media network. It could be putting their logo up on your website or your any banners in person if you are in your business school. This could be any sort of virtual background, like Chelsea has one with a little logo, and you could consider doing that with your corporate sponsors. What we do at our chapter is giving all of our corporate sponsors a 1 hour time slot to come in and directly recruit to our chapter members and tell us a little bit about their company, any sort of opportunities, or even turn it almost into a professional event as well, where they come in and talk about what they do and some professional skills for us. And then we also offer up a resume book of all of our brothers and their qualifications, and they get that information directly, so then they can directly recruit from some of the, as I may be biased, some of the best business students at our schools. But really get creative with this. This is a great way to think of some really low cost ways that your chapter can create a mutually beneficial relationship for that corporate sponsor, because you can get a lot from them in return. Alrighty, so now we are going to bring this to a whole group discussion. So feel free to unmute yourself, and we would just love to hear some ideas that you've seen your chapters do, either for fundraising or corporate sponsorships if you do that, or any sort of financial management tips you have for your chapter, or any questions you may have.
Hi, thank you guys for the great presentation. Oh, sorry, I'm like, yeah, so I guess at our chapter, shirts are really big. And I guess it's sort of a collection to, you know, get one every year, which is exciting. I love what you mentioned about the services, and that's definitely something we're going to look more into. I had a question about the corporate sponsorships. I'm just wondering, like, what some of the practices you use to reach out are. Like, are you using LinkedIn or like the DSP Alumni Network? And then what sorts of things are you saying in the initial message to, you know, not scare them away of, you know, being a sponsor, but getting them excited about what we're about?
So in our chapter, we have one specific exec position whose whole job is like corporate partnerships. So definitely recommend that if you're really looking to kind of like develop out this in your chapter. But what we do is we kind of look to see companies where a lot of our new Tau brothers work, or like either interned or a lot of our graduate brothers work, because that can kind of give you that like warm intro. And so typically like how we go about it is we will reach out to a brother who currently works there or just recently worked there, and kind of have them send an email, like a three-way email that's like, oh, hi, like HR manager, this is Katie. We both are in the New Tau chapter of DSP. Here's a little bit about DSP. Here's what they do. Gonna pass it back to Katie to let her kind of like connect and tell you a little bit more. And then our corporate sponsorship person will usually set up an in-person meeting. Obviously, it's a little tricky now. And basically just kind of first, once you have that intro, kind of explaining more of what we do. So those organizations can kind of understand why they would want to partner with us versus any other student organization or any other organization in general. And then we start out by saying, like, here's the benefits of what we can provide you. And if you're willing to like develop the resources, we have like 3 different packages. So it's like, I think it's like purple, gold, and bronze of like, oh, for the bottom tier is like $500, say, and this is what you get. And the middle tier is $1,000, and this is what you get. And then like the top tier. And so we kind of create that out and say, like, here's our packages, here's what we can offer you, and kind of go from there. And you'll find out that most businesses, especially the big ones, do really want to help out student organizations, and especially if you can kind of get that relationship going early, we found that that will increase your chances of success.
That's perfect. Thanks, Katie. Are they always, is the best contact, do you usually find like the HR recruiters or like community development, like partnership
Good
development?
question. I think we usually go after like HR managers or like the like whoever kind of reaches out to like hire in like new grads or like hire in interns. We usually start there, and sometimes they refer us over to that like community development department. But we usually start with HR because we usually have someone from HR like come in eventually to talk to us. But I'd be interested to hear if Chelsea or Shanda have any other suggestions, if they've heard anything be successful.
I would say always check and see if you've got a Delta Sig working there. You know, go through LinkedIn, see if you find that Delta Sigma Pi relationship, check your own files and records, contact us at the central office. You know, because obviously if you've got that Delta Sig connection, wow, that's the way to go, you know, and
Definitely.
they put you in touch with HR or corporate, you know, development or whatever, but seek that first and foremost always. And then all the other ideas Katie had, fantastic. And anywhere you can get your foot in the door, just get it in.
Definitely. Thanks, Shanda.
I was just going to echo what Shanda said exactly. And if you know, you never know if you might know someone from another chapter there. You know, if you've got any local chapters in the area and you know some brothers at those local chapters and they might know someone, definitely check with them. I think that's a good initial step as well.
And there are a lot of Delta Sigs and all the, you know, the tech companies and stuff out in your area. Oh my God.
Definitely.
There are
there's
Delta
a lot of
Sigs
opportunity.
galore.
Okay. Look into that. Chelsea, I know you said you've been working with like many chapters. I'm just wondering if there's any practices that you talked about that you think make for most successful chapters.
Ooh, that is a great question. One of the practices that I've seen help a lot of chapters that some have told me that they've been instituting throughout their time of being involved in finance is collecting receipts. Honestly, that can be one of the most beneficial financial best practices is just keeping track of everything. And I know some chapters have problems with things like getting reimbursed and stuff like that. So I think keeping receipts, or even if you can like take a picture of a receipt, that can be really beneficial. That's been one of the best tips that I can offer based on stuff I've heard from other chapters. And I think once we move into the resources portion of this presentation, you'll also find a lot more best practices and financial tips as well. There are tons of resources on the website. They're just, it's like endless, the number that I can recommend. But once we get into that, you'll see a lot more of the things that I recommend. And including that, one of the big things is reviewing that financial operations page, the fraternity operations page on the website. That can be really helpful if you're trying to guesstimate your funding.
Perfect. Thanks both.
You're welcome. Did anyone else have any other questions or anything else you want to share? Is there something you feel like your chapter is doing really well that you'd like us to share with other chapters? Caitlin, I know you said you were working on transition documents. Is there anything specific that you've put into those documents that you think will really help your chapter grow and will help you financially?
Well, I actually just had my one-on-one with my VP of Finance today, and we are talking a lot just about doing like a lot more of like step by step, like this is how you do stuff. Our university, like we are able to get funding through our university, but it's a really weird process that she just had to go through. So we were talking about like, what do you need to do that? Also some like timeline things of like, hey, this is when each of these things needs to be ordered or paid or whatever it may be. So just, I guess, setting out more clear expectations about when everything gets done and how to do things. So that way, when the next person comes in, they're not like, okay, I see that I'm supposed to do X, but I have no clue how to do it. So I think that'll be really, really helpful, especially because we've had a lot of turnover in that position specifically.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And finance is one of the key things that you really want to make sure that transition hits home. So, Isaac, did you have any questions or anything that you wanted to share?
Earlier, I think it was Katie who was talking about the different sort of tiers that they offer in exchange for corporate sponsorship. And I was wondering if maybe I could hear a couple of examples from those tiers specifically, because I know we've been like resume booklets in the past, and those have been semi-successful. But in terms of other ideas of what the chapter and the brothers can offer sponsors, I'd be really interested to hear some more of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So we have had to change up our deals a little bit this past year, and so the tiers look a little bit different. But some things that we've had across the board have been the resume book. We've done logos on our on basically our website and our social medias. We have in our basic package, we give them a 1 hour time slot to come in and recruit to us / do a professional event. We're going to have a life skills event where it was basically going to be like different stations, and each corporate sponsor had a little station to like teach us some sort of life skill, like how to invest or how to like buy a home based on like whatever the organization was. Unfortunately, that got canceled because of COVID last year, but that was something that we were really excited about because all of our partnerships are like school year long partnerships. So definitely would recommend a year-long package if you're still trying to decide that. Other things we have included have just been like more direct access to like our chapter members. So like if it's a like specific company that's looking for finance majors, we will like directly like package over all of our finance majors. But yeah, we've done a lot of we've done community service events with our corporate sponsors. Like we'll both meet up at the same organization at the same time. But yeah, basically just thinking of any way that you can kind of provide that free value, or at least like low cost to you value. I've seen chapters that are a little bit like more established or bigger than our chapter do case competitions, or like a graduating senior dinner, where like the seniors sit down next to like a HR person from one of your corporate sponsors, and then you like rotate around, and then you kind of get that one-on-one FaceTime. Yeah, I've seen people do stuff on t-shirts if you're a big t-shirt school. Hopefully those ideas help, Isaac.
Yeah, those are a lot of really fantastic suggestions. Thank you for that. I'll pass them on to the chapter at the next meeting. Thank you.
Awesome.
I think one other thing to kind of keep in mind, since we've been really emphasizing corporate sponsorship, has been you don't always have to receive a monetary donation from your corporate sponsors. Something else to keep in mind is maybe like, so for example, let's say one of your local businesses is like a sporting goods store. So maybe they can send you like some soccer balls if you want to throw a soccer ball tournament, and then you can host it kind of in their name. That would be a really cool brotherhood event to do. There are a bunch of different things that your local corporate sponsors can offer. So just keep that in mind. All right. Did you
Yeah,
all
we've
have,
also partnered with our local pizza place across the street, and they have like sponsored one of our like, well, when we used to have recruitment in person, we would do one of our kind of like meet the bros recruitment events over in their like party room, and they would like give us pizza and give us the room free of charge in exchange for like being one of our partners. So it doesn't always have to be like huge organizations. It can be your small local companies as well. So that's also something to consider.
definitely, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything else you want to talk about? Okay, awesome. Well, I think I'm going to start sharing again, and we will take a look at this. So now we're going to move into some additional resources, like what I was saying earlier. Most of these, when you go to the website and you search them in the search bar, it's right there. So these are all the different ones, and now I'm going to kind of show you something that can hopefully be really resourceful for you if you are the VP Finance of your chapter, and kind of show you where to find a lot of these resources on the website. So here, if you go to, I'm going to move this here. So if you go to resources and then you go chapter operation resources, vice president of finance, you have a ton of financial resources here. And Caitlin, this might be good to share with your VP finance as well. You've got your officer training module. That's a wonderful resource for you. It kind of gives you a breakdown of all of your duties and some tips as a VP finance. You've got a whole officer packet. You can log into the hub from here. Ask us at central office if you have any questions. Financial management and fundraising during COVID, that video is there as well. You've got some other ones, fundraising resources. Those are great. Chapter finance tips. Literally, there are so many tips here. It's wonderful. Another thing that can be really beneficial is, I mentioned it earlier, so the fraternity operations page. Normally when I'm on a visit and I show this to chapters, they're like, wow, that's so helpful. And you actually have to take out the word page. That's important to note. So once you review this, it really gives you a breakdown of all the expenses that a chapter can incur in an academic year. So it'll really prepare you for kind of what the future looks like and different things that you should account for. And it's updated every year. So these are some of these things have been modified for this academic year. Next year, that might look a little different, but we'll see when that gets there. So does anyone have any questions about any of those resources, or did you want to know how to find any other specific resources? Okay, awesome. So I think we'll just keep moving along then. But these are some different ones. Again, the CMP guide was another one that I meant to show you. If you go to the chapter website, if you go to the Delta Sigma Pi website and you scroll to the bottom and see CMP, that's where your CMP guide is. And that'll kind of tell you everything to look out for in the academic year. Okay. So we've already kind of had that question and answer period, but did y'all have any other questions? Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, here is our contact information. That is my personal mobile cell phone number. So some chapters call, some chapters text me, but I'm always available. And then that's my email. If you need anything from other staff members, you can always email hub@dsp.org or consultants@dsp.org. And there you go, Katie. You can kind of wrap up your portion as well.
Alrighty, well, this is my email. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to try and answer them as best as I can, or give you suggestions on what we've done as a chapter, what I've seen other chapters do as well. But otherwise, thank you all for joining us, and have a good rest of your Monday.
Thank you guys so much. This was super helpful.
Anytime. Let us know if you need anything else, Amelia.
Sounds great. Keep in touch. See you all.
think we can stop recording now.